Now, it's just after 10 to 7, and Prince Harry and his now infamous trip to Las Vegas have dominated the headlines here this week. That looks set to continue, with some papers reporting today that there could be more photographs to come.
Well, while the young royal may prove that what happens in Vegas doesn't always stay there, he's also proof that the so-called spare heir is always destined to make the news for all the wrong reasons.
Here with us now is the royal historian Kate Williams to take a look at this more. Kate, thanks very much indeed for coming in. Morning. Is it sort of typical of his position, third in line to the throne, that he should...
The spare heir, it's a hard life.
It's a cruel term, really, isn't it?
Spare heir, well, it was always what was said, that if you're an aristocratic or royal lady, your job was to produce the heir and the spare, and then after that you could do what you wanted. It was, you know, you had to do that as quickly as you could after the marriage, then after that you could enjoy yourself. But that was your job, 2 boys, the heir and the spare. And, you know, it is a pretty cruel way to see it, the spare. And, of course, that's the problem. Everyone wants the Prince of Wales. Throughout history, everyone's wanted the Prince of Wales. And then number 2, you know, gets a bit overlooked. And, of course, now that William is living a much more of a quiet life, Harry gets to have all this attention. And, you know, the problem is with being a prince is you get everything. You've got money, you've got status, you've got influence. And it's always been said throughout history that princes, they get everything. They get big temptations. And it's hard to resist. And this is what we're finding in Vegas, a lot of temptation out there.
Could Prince Harry perhaps turn to his uncle, Prince Andrew, for a bit of advice
Well,
here?
we've had a few. And, you know, actually throughout history, we know that it's harder to find a well-behaved royal at Harry's age than a naughty one. You know, so many. I mean, you know, he looks a bit like Henry VIII, and there's certainly Henry VIII had an eye for the ladies, and luckily, of course, Harry can't behead anyone who gets him into trouble like Henry VIII can, no one who betrays him. But there was, I think, one of the naughtiest ancestors was the future George IV, who was Prince of Wales. Him and his brothers, well, George IV, he had a secret marriage, an illegal marriage against his father's wishes, so at least Harry hasn't got married in a chapel in Las Vegas like Britney Spears did. And he and his brothers, sisters between them, managed to produce 56 illegitimate children, and he was blackmailed by actresses. It just goes on.
Hopefully that will never happen these days.
Well, no.
I mean, just going back to this term, spare heir, the reason I think it's so cruel is actually he does do a lot of work for the country. He represents the country. You know, you saw his role in the Olympic Games. He's an ambassador for various countries, and you just wonder, perhaps, has the press, or are we, a little harsh on him because he is the younger brother and he is still doing his job?
Absolutely, and of course he's done marvellous work for charity, brilliant work in Afghanistan. He may be stationed back to Afghanistan. I mean, I think this probably was the plan, although possibly this media storm might suggest that it's going to be impossible to keep his whereabouts secret again if he goes back. So, you know, Harry's really been working hard to rehabilitate his image, and I think this has put it back slightly. This isn't quite what the palace wants to see, but it is pretty difficult. You know, everything you do is out there being photographed. He said, you know, I want to meet a woman, I want to settle down, but it's quite hard because you're always scrutinised. And of course, William was allowed to do this in private at university. The paparazzi, the cameras stayed away, and Harry's being followed. But, you know, always throughout history, I think it's pretty difficult also to try and carve out your role. Because really, you're not like your brother. You're not going to be king. You're not going to rule. You're always going to wait. And it was very hard for Princess Margaret, the sister of Queen Elizabeth II. She had this very difficult life, and really, when the royal family didn't really realise it, she really began a relationship with a divorced man that was impossible, and she really didn't realise until the last minute that she'd have to give up her claim to the throne. It's not easy when you're not the one getting to reign.
So much more difficult as well nowadays. I mean, you brought some lovely historical context there, lots of historical figures. But nowadays, in 24 media society, Twitter and photographs flying around, email and everything else, it's almost impossible to have a private life, one would imagine.
Well, you're right, Roger. I mean, what I think now, I look back at Charles and Diana and the fallout and what we didn't know about what was going behind closed doors in that marriage. I just don't think it would have been that secret if it was happening now, because Twitter, Facebook, gossip, you know, the people's are selling their story because the royals are massive commodities. I mean, celebrity is the biggest commodity of our time. Other commodities are going down in value with the economic situation, not celebrity. It's just going up, and particularly in America. I mean, I thought it was quite interesting that in Vegas, Harry Harry met up with these young men from Essex, and they were asked to tell, they said, all the newspapers said, tell your story. What was it like partying with Harry? And they said, we're going to keep it quiet. We're not saying we love him. That's not what happens in the rest of the world. Why should they feel that way? And of course, these ladies are earning, so far, a huge amount of money from selling their story. He's a big game in the celebrity hunt.
Just briefly, what happens now with Prince Harry? Is it locked down by the royal family?
Well, I really think that there's going to be no more Vegas holidays. Harry went to Vegas and he was given a bit of freedom. And, in general, what do you go to Vegas for? You don't really go to Vegas to talk about art and music, really, do you? You go to pool parties to have fun, and that's what happens. And I think from now on, Harry may have to go on holiday to Balmoral, and the royal family, I think, are going to stop pushing him to really settle down and get married, perhaps around the age of 30. So no more pool parties.
Oh, dear. Kate, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good to see you.